You are listening to audiobooks at Feel Good Cultivation audio channel. Up next is Demon Emperor Episode Bon. Chapter Kong Nguyen Ho lit an incense stick, holding a fragrant sachet, and chanted a passage from the marvelous fragrance Celestial Maiden's Universal Salvation True Scripture, thereby summoning a celestial maiden from another realm. Before his eyes, the celestial maiden descended from the sky, her silken robes falling to the ground one by one. As soon as Nguyen Ho saw her, he spoke directly. If one knows the entrance to a ghost gate of an underworld realm and the method, how can one eliminate the ghostly deities and spirits near that ghost gate and seize that deity's underworld realm? The marvelous fragrant celestial maiden understood immediately upon hearing. Your Majesty actually knows the method to open King Ma's underworld ghost realm? Nguyen Ho did not deny it. Indeed, instead of waiting for him to come to our doorstep, it's better to seize the initiative. Nguyen Ho had made up his mind. This time, he would no longer passively wait for the opponent to make a move before responding. Instead, he would turn passivity into proactivity, striking first during the Qingming festival to gain the upper hand. King Ma himself was not important. What was important was that Nguyen Ho had his eyes on the nether soldiers in the opponent's hands, and what kind of trans soul he could obtain after killing the opponent. Nguyen Ho thought to himself, if I can obtain those nether soldiers, plus the magical technique that Ghost Shaman used before, it will be effective at a critical moment. After hearing this, the celestial maiden was extremely joyful. Your Majesty only needs to open that ghost gate and hold it open, preventing them from closing it. Leave everything else to me. The celestial maiden must have long coveted King Ma and that underworld ghost realm, just like Nguyen Ho, but she had been powerless against him. Now, hearing that Nguyen Ho intended to act against him, and even had a way to open the opponent's ghost gate, this was like grasping the enemy's lifeline, equivalent to having someone from the enemy's side open the city gates for you during a siege. What fight would be left then? Naturally, she was overjoyed. Even as she spoke, she became somewhat more alluring towards Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho, they are all ghostly deities. My subordinates are all living people. How can we deal with them? The celestial maiden said, I have tomb incense, originally used to allow descendants to see their ancestors, but it can also be used to see ghosts. Just burn the incense in front of that ghost gate, and it will make those ghostly spirits visible to people. Nguyen Ho, so what if we can see them? Mundane swords and blades can hardly harm ghostly creatures. The celestial maiden, just smear them with chicken blood, and you can kill ghosts. Nguyen Ho, is it that simple? The celestial maiden, they are merely ghostly creatures that haven't found a successful anchor. Once caught and their weaknesses found, they are insignificant. The only fear is if those ghosts find something in the mortal realm to anchor themselves to, then it would be much more troublesome. For example, the possessed nether soldiers Your Majesty encountered before. It was because evil magic was used to make the nether soldiers possess people. Only then could they cause such a great disturbance. However, techniques like sowing beans to create soldiers have never been something ordinary people can learn. The price for using them is also very high, and they cannot be used casually. Nguyen Ho then inquired further about the origins of that King Ma. Although he had heard some legends, he still didn't clearly understand what King Ma was all about. Nguyen Ho, King Ma is a ghostly deity of the hell path, obeying the commands of the great emperor of Fengdu? The marvelous fragrance celestial maiden, yes, but not entirely. Nguyen Ho, what do you mean by that? The marvelous fragrance celestial maiden told Nguyen Ho, the underworld is like the mortal realm. Various ghostly deities guard their respective regions, and all have their own spheres of influence. Some declare themselves kings, while others pledge allegiance to a certain power and follow its commands. There are also those who outwardly obey orders but are actually regional warlords, with heaven high and earth far. Even the emperor and high officials above can do nothing about them. This King Ma is exactly like that. Nguyen Ho roughly understood. He exclaimed, a vassal state? Nguyen Ho hadn't expected that even in the gloomy underworld, the order of things was still so chaotic. much like that of a traveling opera troupe. Even the lofty emperor had to suffer headaches because of these subordinates. It seemed, regardless of whether it was the mortal world or the underworld, some aspects weren't too different. The so-called deities, at times, their ways of dealing with matters and the problems they encountered were not much different from the emperors, kings, and nobles in the mortal world. The marvelous fragrant celestial maiden didn't know what Nguyen Ho was thinking and continued to speak about King Ma. King Ma has under him 300-mile patrolling spirits, 17 ghost generals of the 5 directions, and additionally, 3 divisions of ghost general nether soldiers. They ride horses, donkeys, and mules respectively. The leading ghost generals are titled General Black 4, Chief Zuyu, and Iron Departed Ghost. The marvelous fragrant celestial maiden also spoke of King Ma's origins. It was said he was once an ancient official overseeing horses. A horse supervisor didn't just care for horses, they raised all rideable creatures, even goats and cattle. There were also rumors that King Ma was a general's horse that became a deity after its death. Furthermore, some said he was originally 2 different deities who merged 100 years ago to become one. In the way of gods, this was not an uncommon occurrence. The Qingming festival had arrived. During the day, families in the city went out to climb mountains or offer sacrifices to ancestors. Some also invited monks, Taoist priests, or Wu shamans to perform some rituals. Night had fallen deep. At this time, Nguyen Ho once again led his men to the front of the West Market Tower. All the long sabers were soaked in rooster blood, and the arrows had been steeped in rooster blood for an entire day. Previously, Nguyen Ho had asked the marvelous fragrant celestial maiden, "Why does this mere rooster blood have such an effect on ghostly creatures? Could it be that a rooster's body contains magical power or something mystical?" The marvelous fragrant celestial maiden, because in this region, it has always been believed that rooster blood can exorcise evil and repel ghosts. This is the yin-yang law of this domain. Nguyen Ho said in awe, "The willpower of sentient beings holds such power." Nguyen Ho asked again, "If we leave this western city area and go elsewhere, will this rooster blood still be useful?" The marvelous fragrant celestial maiden, "If that place historically lacks this rumor and custom, then it might be effective sometimes and not others. However, most places have their own secret arts for dealing with ghosts. For example, substituting dog blood for rooster blood. This is, when in Rome, do as the Romans do." At this very moment, Nguyen Ho squatted before the tower gate, awaiting the opportune moment. The time had come. He then saw several Wu shamans, who had appeared from who knows where, dancing in front of the West Market Tower gate. The lead Wu shaman held the soul summoning bell that Nguyen Ho had previously obtained from the Hell Path ghost shaman, and was performing a ritual beneath the tower gate. After a long wait, something strange happened beneath the tower gate. In the dead of night, a thick fog appeared from nowhere. The fog spread from West Market Street. Looking from afar, the pavilions and shops of West Market gradually disappeared, and in the dim darkness, a desolate, netherworldly land could be vaguely seen. If someone with a Dharma eye looked inside, they would see deep within a gloomy shrine, and surrounding the shrine was a dilapidated ghost city, terribly ruined. Around the ghost city were barracks, and in their midst, swift-moving ghost horse nether soldiers could be glimpsed. Nguyen Ho, clad in armor and holding a saber, stood amidst his battle formation. Everyone prepared themselves and advanced. Axemen took their positions, forming layers of ranks. Archers drew their crossbows. Row upon row aimed directly at the ghost gate. Logically speaking, Nguyen Ho was the son of heaven. This kind of charging into battle and killing was not something he should do. Sitting in the palace, holding sway from the high court, that was what the son of heaven should do. But this son of heaven, Nguyen Ho, was somewhat different. If he didn't charge to the front, how could he become stronger? Everyone, hold your positions. Do not act rashly. Today, Nguyen Ho wanted to seize King Ma's netherworld domain, snatch his nether soldiers, and slay his horses. However, just as Nguyen Ho's side had lit the tomb incense and before they could do anything else, Strange sounds came from the direction of the tower gate, which had transformed into the ghost gate. Clop, clop, clop. Nguyen Ho's ears perked up immediately. This sounded like hoofbeats, and moreover, they were coming from inside the ghost gate. This was not like the usual return of ghosts to the mortal world during Qingming festival, but more like a large-scale passage of nether soldiers. Nguyen Ho's side had just made their move. Merely an instant. How could the enemy react so quickly? But Nguyen Ho didn't dwell on it and immediately shouted, "Enemy attack! Seal the pass!" And at this moment, the smoke from the tomb incense had also drifted into the ghost gate. The tower gate and the deep, empty passage, which previously held nothing, suddenly revealed one shadow after another. They were ferocious fiends riding ghost horses, ghost donkeys, and ghost mules, each with a savage and extremely malevolent face, leaping out from the darkness and charging towards the mortal world. As soon as they charged out, they saw the battle formation outside and, like Nguyen Ho, felt caught off guard, even more terrified and panicked. What's happening? There's an ambush outside. This is bad. Someone must have betrayed us. There's a traitor. And at this moment, 10,000 arrows shot towards them simultaneously. Chapter Mo Yin and Yang divided the two realms, humans and ghosts. A single door apart, humans and ghosts faced each other across that threshold. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho stood decisively before the crucial gate, ordering the soldiers under his command to fire arrows through it. Armored troops on both sides were already in formation, ready, and on the other side of this gate, the one who would later be known as Lord Mahdi, the commander leading the underworld's ghost army in their charge, was stunned by a preemptive strike. Arrows rained down, each one piercing the bodies of the vengeful ghosts. When the first arrow pierced through, their ghostly forms were merely torn, shattering and then gradually fading. With the second and third arrows, they shattered into several pieces, ultimately dissolving into wisps of smoke. "Ah, I'm hit. I'm hit by an arrow. Why can these mortals shoot us?" Each underworld soldier let out a wretched cry, and the ghost horses accompanying them also vanished. This scene, it struck even greater terror into the hearts of the vengeful ghosts. Not all humans became ghosts after death, and most of those who did were mere wandering spirits. Among the countless wandering spirits from ancient times to the present, few were like them, receiving incense offerings, able to roam freely and wreak havoc in the underworld. Having come this far, they naturally did not want to suffer the fate of having their souls scattered and spirits dispersed. Behind the horse-faced deity, a group of ghost generals and underworld soldiers shouted in alarm, "This is bad. Those arrows can injure us. Why can those people see us? Could it be they've all opened their yin-yang eyes? This isn't right. Quickly, retreat, fall back. There's an ambush ahead. We've fallen into a trap. Withdraw the troops immediately." All the vengeful ghosts looked towards this horse-faced deity. Even though he hadn't given the order to retreat, each one began to slow their pace, ceasing their forward charge. However, at this moment, the vanguard of underworld soldiers riding ghost horses couldn't stop themselves and had already charged out of the ghost gate. On the human side, Yuchi Chongwu immediately raised his hand, shouting loudly, "Hold, broadsword wielders, advance!" Immediately, all the archers began to lower their bows, ceasing their actions. But the armored soldiers on both sides advanced one by one, raising their blood-red great swords, and slashed towards the vengeful ghosts who had just charged out of the ghost gate. Under the moonlight, cold glints of steel flashed. Each vengeful ghost, rider and steed alike, was cleaved in two, unable to return to the underworld. Having slaughtered those vengeful ghosts, the broadsword wielders retreated one by one, reforming their ranks. Witnessing this battle formation, all the ghosts were scared out of their wits. It had always been humans who feared ghosts. Today, the situation was reversed. Before this ghost gate, things were completely contrary. "Divine Lord, we can't advance any further. These people are specifically targeting us. Let's retreat quickly. There's still time. Someone must have betrayed us. Divine Lord, quickly return and investigate thoroughly. This Nguyen Ho is fierce and formidable. even more unpredictable than us ghosts and deities. We can't fight a losing battle. Right at this moment, Lord Ma made an instant decision. We cannot simply retreat like this. We must close the ghost gate. Quick, close the gate. Close the ghost gate. This ghost deity immediately saw the crux of the matter. These people had definitely come prepared. Blocking the front of this ghost gate wasn't just to prevent them from coming out. They surely had other plans. The horse-faced deity roared in anger. And immediately, his ghostly subordinates began to close the gate. But as soon as those ghosts acted, they discovered a problem. This gate was not opened by them. The authority to close it was not in their hands. The ghost soldier let go, trembling as he knelt on the ground to report. Divine Lord, this gate wasn't opened by us. What? The horse-faced deity was furious. And the remaining vengeful ghosts and roaming spirits looked at each other in dismay. Huh? This gate wasn't opened by us? It was opened by those people from the mortal world. How do they know the spell to open the gate? Indeed, there's a traitor among us. Who is it? Who could it possibly be? The horse-faced deity was instantly stunned. Just moments ago, the mortal realm performed a ritual. And the underworld also performed a ritual. The two sides were separated by a gate and couldn't see each other. Not until the ghost gate opened. Both sides had assumed they were the ones who opened the gate. Ultimately, Nguyen Ho's side had been a step faster. And the authority to close the gate lay with the magical artifact in the hands of Wu Shi, who was on Nguyen Ho's side. However, the ghosts and deities of the underworld still had a way to close the gate. The horse-faced deity commanded, "You few, quickly go forward and close the gate." If they couldn't directly dispel the spell that opened the gate, then they would have to use brute force, having the ghosts push the heavy ghost gate shut. Instantly, a group of lesser ghosts soared up, circling around, heading towards the structure that was a combination of the West Market Tower Gate and the Ghost Gate. One by one, they leapt onto the thick gate, using all their strength to try and close it. Immediately, the massive gate emitted a creaking sound. Seeing this, Nguyen Ho shot an arrow, hitting one of the lesser ghosts on the gate, and then gave the order, "Shoot all those lesser ghosts down for me." "Yes, sir." This time, it wasn't a volley of arrows, but aimed shots. Countless arrows successively thudded into the dark red massive gate, the sound like hammering nails. Thwack, 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 thwack. The lesser ghosts pushing the gate let out wretched screams one by one, turning into puddles of viscous liquid on the ground, then seeping into the cracks between the bricks and vanishing without a trace. Those who dared to try and close the gate were shot, their souls scattered and spirits dispersed on the spot. Roar! Nguyen Ho heard the tiger's roar again. The tiger spirit had rushed out once more. However, that tiger's shadow moved in the darkness, and the others still couldn't see it. The tomb and incense of that wondrous fragrance heavenly maiden were formidable. Yet they couldn't illuminate Nguyen Ho's tiger spirit. Perhaps this tiger was also no ordinary underworld ghost. Before the ghost gate, humans and ghosts fought, shaking the heavens and earth. And looking down that long, deep street, at its very end was the location of the Heavenly Maiden Palace. At this moment, the great gates of the Heavenly Maiden Palace boomed open. Inside and outside the palace, lamps and torches blazed brightly. On a high platform, young male and female acolytes on either side were chanting scriptures and incantations. Rows of incense burners were arranged in a formation, burning countless tall incense sticks, the thick fragrant smoke billowing high into the air. Go! At this time, the mural in the main hall lit up. In the center of the mural, the deity, surrounded and protected by a host of heavenly maidens, raised a hand and gently waved outwards. A rich fragrance, carried by the smoke, spread downwards, flowed along the long street into the ghost gate, and finally poured into the underworld. Layer upon layer, continuous and unending, that stream of smoke, which in the mortal world was so faint that mortal eyes couldn't see it, only able to smell the delicate fragrance with their noses, underwent a dramatic transformation in an instant as it rushed into the ghost gate in the underworld. Like the Yangtze River flowing upstream, like the Yellow River bursting its dikes. The terrifying force instantly scattered the ghost generals and underworld soldiers, throwing the inside into chaos. This time, the horse-faced deity was utterly panicked. "Quick, close the gate! Quick, close the gate!" Groups of lesser ghosts charged forward. Even large contingents of underworld soldiers rushed up. The result? They were either swept away or shot down. The wondrous fragrance Heavenly Maiden began to devour the spiritual domain of the underworld. This contest was not about who had more soldiers or larger territory. This was a contest of incense offerings and foundational strength. But now, the Heavenly Maiden Palace was an orthodox deity personally infected by the Son of Heaven of Great Sheng. While they were merely malevolent deities and wicked ghosts from illicit shrines that had been suppressed by the imperial court. One side was water with a source. The other was rootless duckweed. Even if they could cope temporarily, they ultimately couldn't withstand the overwhelming force pouring down from the Heavenly Maiden Palace. The horse-faced deity stood behind the ghost gate, looking at the layers upon layers of soldiers arrayed outside, at those iron-armored generals in the crowd who were as fierce as tigers and wolves. Even more terrifying than them. And in the far distance, at the very end, the Heavenly Maiden Palace stood tall and aloof, continuously emitting a billowing stream of smoke. That brightly lit palace looked like a celestial city in the heavens. Despair appeared on his hideous face. "Ah!" With a loud cry, the third eye on the horse-faced deity's forehead shot out myriad rays of golden light, aimed directly at Nguyen Ho's position. The golden light was so dazzling that everyone was unable to open their eyes. The imperial guards facing the light had to close their eyes. Yuchi Chongwu thought it was some demonic sorcery and immediately rushed towards Nguyen Ho. The surrounding officers and soldiers also immediately pushed forward to form a barrier, some even shouting loudly, quote, "Protect His Highness! Protect His Highness!" Nguyen Ho, however, saw clearly. At that very moment, a tall and imposing figure leading a band of underworld soldiers charged out. Meng Con Ho Lon Nung Tieng Kai Ma Noi Song Kong Tai Nao Huen Oi. His mouth shouting demonic words that no living person could understand. "Go! Charge out!" Nguyen Ho pushed aside the person in front of him, saying, "He wants to escape." He directly drew his bow, aiming at the leading figure. Swoosh! Nguyen Ho shot an arrow that struck the horse-faced deity. But this arrow wasn't enough to kill him. Only a strange cry was heard. In the end, he still managed to lead 20 or 30 ghost generals and subordinates, enveloped in that dazzling golden light, to escape through a gap. As soon as they were out of the range covered by the fragrance, their figures also became invisible. Nguyen Ho looked towards the direction where they had disappeared far away, then finally brought his gaze back to the front of the ghost gate. There were still people shooting arrows towards the fleeing horse-faced deity, and even a squad of bold broadsword wielders prepared to mount horses and pursue in that direction. "Enough! Don't pursue! Guard this pass well! Don't let a single one escape!" At this very moment, this place was no longer a gloomy ghost gate. It was his granary, his treasury. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Feel Good Cultivation Audio Channel Chapter High Dawn was approaching. Yet Nguyen Ho still had his men stationed, guarding the front of the ghost gate. Subsequently, a few more demonic entities and wandering spirits continued to rush out sporadically. But all of them were shot and killed, not a single one escaped. As the sky finally began to lighten, Nguyen Ho heard a sound. The dense fog that had been ceaselessly pouring into the ghost gate, at this very moment, began to flow in reverse. A great, roaring rush, invisible to the naked eye of mortals. Nguyen Ho, however, witnessed countless dark figures being drawn out from within the ghost gate along with that stream of fog. It was clearly fog, yet it produced a sound like rushing water. Within it, mingled the sounds of men and women weeping, and cries for mercy, resembling a procession of captives being escorted away. Then, it completely transformed into a long river flowing through the main street, receding into the mural in the Heavenly Maiden Palace. "Withdraw," the herald relayed Nguyen Ho's order. and they too began to ride back. After the fierce battle, Nguyen Ho gradually regained his composure. It wasn't that Lord Ma knew his plan. Rather, when he himself had planned to take advantage of the Qingming festival, using the widening of the Ghost Gate to deal with the enemy. Lord Ma had made a similar decision. Thinking of this, Nguyen Ho, on horseback, felt a sense of fortune. If I hadn't encountered them, and those demons had rushed into the mortal realm, I dread to think what other dark arts might have been awaiting me. Nguyen Ho recalled what he had encountered earlier. A horde of mere vengeful ghost soldiers and a horde of ghost soldiers possessing bodies were two entirely different kinds of entities. Sitting on horseback, Nguyen Ho also began to make a preliminary inventory of his gains from the previous night. Although protected within the crowd of his guards, Nguyen Ho himself had shot and killed 8 or 9 vengeful ghost soldiers last night. Among them, 3 or 4 vengeful spirits dissipated on the spot, leaving nothing behind but a few, in the process of dissipating, had parts of them swallowed by the tiger spirit, becoming sustenance in its belly. Strangely enough, the orbs of light that the tiger spirit spat out, Nguyen Ho could not absorb them. They merely circled around him before returning to the tiger spirit's body. The appearance of this phenomenon immediately confirmed Nguyen Ho's earlier speculation that these Tran Hun and Tran Po were indeed distinct. It truly is the 3 Hun and 7 Po. I just don't know what changes will occur after collecting a complete set of these 3 Hun and 7 Po. A Tran ghost? Instinctively, Nguyen Ho thought of the folklore related to tigers. Nguyen Ho proactively released the tiger spirit and re-examined the orbs of light within its body. Currently, all that had been collected were Tran Po. And moreover, none of them had any significant abilities. They were merely minor skills like blacksmithing, horse tending, cart repairing, and fishing. There was also an insignificant set of saber techniques, far inferior to the 100 battles saber technique that Nguyen Ho currently possessed. Nguyen Ho had no use for them. There was truly no noteworthy gain. But what if he encountered some powerful Tran Po later on? What then? Nguyen Ho pondered further, thinking to himself, can these Tran Hun and Tran Po be interchanged? I must test it out. Unconsciously, Nguyen Ho rode his horse to the front of the Heavenly Maiden Palace. Nguyen Ho dismounted, and someone immediately came to take his horse. A squad of guards followed Nguyen Ho up to the Heavenly Maiden Palace. The palace master, palace chamberlain, and the ritual master led a group of people to welcome him. But Nguyen Ho paid them no mind, directly entering the depths of the main hall, passing through silk curtains, past the deity statues. In the deepest part, Nguyen Ho once again looked up at the mural. This time, the mural had undergone a slight change. Upon a sea of clouds, a heavenly maiden in magnificent attire, accompanied by various gods and heavenly maidens of the celestial palace, descended from above, high and lofty, and beneath the clouds, hordes of minor demons and wandering spirits kowtowed in submission, their expressions filled with fear. Night fell. On the deserted street corners, a patrolling yaksha appeared on the corner of West Capital's city wall. On either side of the imperial city gates, luminous figures of guardian deities also appeared, staring intently into another dimension, unseen and untouched by mortals. Just as he was about to go out, Nguyen Ho saw 2 eunuchs moving items into the bedchamber, and immediately stopped. Nguyen Ho beckoned with his hand, summoning the eunuch at the entrance of the hall. What is this? The eunuch bowed his head, not daring to look at Nguyen Ho, and quickly replied, Has your majesty forgotten? This is the bronze mirror that your majesty previously ordered as servants to take to the artisans for repair. It is said to be repaired and has been consecrated for 3 days at the Heavenly Maiden Palace, and then brought here. This bronze mirror was no ordinary mirror. It was the medium that the ghost shaman had previously used to cast spells on the concubines in the harem. Originally an ancient mirror, it possessed a certain notable history. On the night the spell was cast, it was slashed by Nguyen Ho's sword, and the ghost shaman's sorcery was broken. Afterward, Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang said this ancient mirror was extraordinary, and if repaired, could be used for important matters. So, Nguyen Ho ordered the artisans to repair it. After many days, this ancient mirror was finally considered repaired. "Oh, I remember now. Cover the mirror securely, and don't let anyone lift the covering cloth." The eunuch hurriedly said, "Yes." After saying this, Nguyen Ho left the palace to attend to other matters. Returning to his bedchamber that night, Nguyen Ho prepared to bathe. Unlike the ancients of that era, Nguyen Ho insisted on bathing once every day, even more fastidious about cleanliness than the delicate concubines in the harem. After Nguyen Ho finished bathing and changing his clothes, he heard someone calling him, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Nguyen Ho's gaze immediately locked onto the mirror. He stepped forward and lifted the cloth covering it, instantly seeing the mirror's gleaming surface reflecting the scene within the bedchamber. The light was brilliant, and as Nguyen Ho looked at the reflection, he saw the somewhat dim light in the mirror gradually coalesce into a human figure. Standing right behind him, Nguyen Ho immediately turned his head, and indeed saw a person standing behind him. Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang? Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang performed a salutation, then said softly, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Then, she stepped forward, took Nguyen Ho's sleeve, and walked to the side of the mirror. Nguyen Ho was very surprised, because whether they were ghosts or yin spirits, they did not belong to the mortal world, and surviving in the mortal world was extremely difficult. Sunlight felt like burning fire, and a cold wind like a cutting blade, unless it was at specific times and places. Otherwise, to linger in the mortal realm for long, the most crucial thing was to have an object to attach themselves to. Deities attached themselves to statues or paintings, vengeful ghosts to corpses or other items. Nguyen Ho knew this ancient mirror was a very special anchoring object. But what Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang was demonstrating at this moment was more than just that. She seemed to have truly appeared in the mortal world, able to walk and move about in the Yang realm. One must understand that for those ghost soldiers to move in the mortal world, they had to borrow the physical bodies of others. Although Nguyen Ho was surprised, he did not ask directly. However, Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang seemed to perceive the joy and doubt in Nguyen Ho's heart, and said to him, quote, "It is rumored that the ancient Yellow Emperor forged 15 bronze mirrors, the third of which was named the illusory real void solid scrutinizer mirror." Nguyen Ho was even more astonished this time than when Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang had pulled his sleeve in reality earlier. And he asked loudly, "This is a mirror forged by the Yellow Emperor?" Nguyen Ho thought about how he had previously shattered this mirror with a single sword strike. If he had known its origin sooner, he certainly wouldn't have been so decisive. Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang, of course not. This is merely a replica, but it was likely created by the imperial court during the pre-Qin era. Nguyen Ho understood. So, this mirror's ability is also a simulation of the Yellow Emperor's illusory real void solid scrutinizer mirror? Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang nodded gently, precisely. If this mirror falls into the hands of an ordinary person, it is merely an ordinary mirror. But if it falls into the hands of a deity, then a room reflected in the mirror will merge with that deity's incense-fueled spiritual domain. The room in the mirror and the room outside the mirror become interconnected, illusion becomes reality. And reality becomes illusion. A deity moving within the mirror is no different from moving in the mortal world. Even for yin spirits or lonely ghosts, it is as if they are living beings. Nguyen Ho looked at Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang and nodded slightly. Previously, that Lord Ma intended to use this mirror and secret arts to turn illusion against reality and harm Your Majesty. Nguyen Ho. Then, Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang, what is your intention in placing this mirror in my bedchamber? Could it be, Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang, the Heavenly Maiden Palace is, after all, some distance from Your Majesty's bedchamber. Henceforth, I will have deities take turns on duty within this mirror daily. If Your Majesty has any matters, you can have the deity on duty report to me through here. If someone wishes to harm Your Majesty, the deity on duty can also issue a warning or offer assistance. Nguyen Ho suddenly understood. So that's how it is. Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang, furthermore, This ancient mirror has another function. Although it is a simulated incense-fueled spiritual domain, I have connected it to my marvelous realm of blissful land, opening a back door, so to speak. This meant that Nguyen Ho could directly enter the spiritual domain within the mural through this mirror. However, this entrance was narrow, only allowing one person, or more accurately, one soul, to pass through at a time. Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang waved her hand. A corridor was then seen reflected in the mirror. The view in the mirror was constricted, unlike the mural where the entire vista could be seen. But for this very reason, it made that celestial citadel appear even more serene and unfathomable. Nguyen Ho entered from the back courtyard of the marvelous realm of blissful land, and discovered that this celestial palace had transformed, becoming even more vast. From the original palace, it had changed into something like a fortified city, divided into upper and lower levels. Within it were many patrolling yakshas, guardian deities, and transport strongmen. Deities walked on clouds above, while ghosts and spirits prostrated themselves below. It was truly a majestic and magnificent sight. Compared to its previous leisurely and opulent appearance, it now possessed an added air of imposing majesty and grandeur. And these yakshas, guardian deities, and strongmen, were mostly obtained by refining the ghost general's spirit soldiers previously under Lord Ma. Nguyen Ho said, "Lord Ma's foundation of several hundred years has been seized by you in an instant. Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang, it was seized by your majesty. All these things belong to your majesty, and they only obey your majesty's commands." Nguyen Ho, it's a pity. That vile demon ultimately escaped. Heavenly Maiden Miaoshang, your majesty. Do not worry, that vile demon cannot have fled far. Or perhaps, by fleeing, that vile demon is preparing to deliver yet another foundation to your majesty? Nguyen Ho understood. She seemed to have a hidden meaning. Chapter Ba in the Grand Hall. The officials gathered to discuss matters of state. Today, the imperial court was even more boisterous than before, with one official after another stepping forward to present their reports. Nguyen Ho looked down from his high position at the assembly of officials. In his heart, he no longer saw the shadows of those rebellious traitors. The appearances of some had even changed slightly in recent days. At least, the sight of the civil and military officials no longer filled him with the sense that the nation was on the verge of collapse. The chief of the Ministry of Personnel stepped forward and proclaimed loudly, "Your servant humbly submits. A nation cannot be without a king for a single day. Just as the North Star cannot lose its position, the court cannot be without a prime minister for a single day. Just as a tripod cannot lack its legs." Another official spoke. In ancient times, Yi Yin carried the tripod to assist the Shang king, and the Duke of Zhou spat out his food to receive worthy scholars, thereby pacifying the Zhou dynasty. Now, the ancestral temple is empty, and government decrees are delayed. It is just as the Book of Documents states, how brilliant the head of state, how capable the ministers. I respectfully implore your majesty to make a sagacious decision and swiftly appoint a prime minister to stabilize the state and reassure the common people. Although in Nguyen Ho's eyes, the number of rebellious traitors had diminished, the struggle for power and profit could not be quelled. In recent days, Nguyen Ho had gained a preliminary understanding of the situation among the court officials, at least identifying a portion of them. Currently, the contest for the position of prime minister was mainly divided into two factions. One faction, currently led by Li Hoang, Li Fai's father. He was originally from the former prime minister's residence, representing the old guard who had entered the western capital region with the late emperor. The other faction consisted of imperial relatives and local magnates, represented by figures like Hoang Hoi. Seizing the opportunity after Prime Minister Nguyen Han's death and the severe blow to the other faction, they too jumped into the fray to contend for the position. These two powerful factions had recently been fighting tooth and nail for the Prime Minister's seat. Of course, there was still another faction, those who secretly supported Bui Nguyen Kiu. However, due to Nguyen Ho's covert suppression, they dared not openly vie for the Prime Minister's position. Bui Nguyen Kiu did not belong to either of the aforementioned factions. He was a general from the south who had surrendered later and belonged to a separate group. Originally, the turmoil in the court would not have been so severe. But Nguyen Ho kept procrastinating and not revealing his stance. As a result, this clandestine struggle intensified daily. And now it had erupted openly in the imperial court. Nguyen Ho watched the officials below, their exchanges growing increasingly harsh, attacking each other, even wishing to drive their opponents to their deaths. Nguyen Ho, who had remained silent like a clay statue, finally spoke. First, he signaled the eunuch beside him to quell the chaotic noise in the court. Then said, "Since it has come to this, you all go back and write your memorials. Let's see if anyone can be the Yi Yin or Duke of Zhou for my Dai Tin. What merits do they have? What are their talents and virtues? That they can assume the position of Prime Minister of my Dai Tin? Recommend someone of complete talent and virtue. Only then can they command respect from all." Having spoken, Nguyen Ho dismissed the court. However, upon the court's dismissal, the officials, far from reconciling now that the Son of Heaven had finally shown his stance, found the conflict between the two opposing factions completely inflamed instead. On their way out after the court session, the officials exchanged fierce words, nearly coming to blows. "HMPH, you pack of treacherous villains with hearts of wolves and beasts. You've finally shown your true colors. His Majesty is wise and discerning. He will clearly distinguish who is loyal and who is treacherous. His Majesty has long intended to choose Lord Li. We absolutely cannot let them have their way." Even after returning to their residences, the officials did not stop. They were busy lobbying and forging alliances everywhere. Revolving around this position of Prime Minister, a massive wave surged through the imperial court. After all, the power of the Prime Minister was truly too enticing. Take Nguyen Han, for example. He not only managed all the officials but even covertly controlled the military forces in the western capital. Even if a future Prime Minister couldn't match Nguyen Han, such power was enough to stir people's hearts and make them stake everything. The inner palace. Nguyen Ho arrived at Li Fai's bedchamber as promised. Passing through the torchlight, past the kneeling eunuchs attending before him, Nguyen Ho saw Li Fai. Without a word, their eyes met, and it was as if a fire had been ignited. Nguyen Ho moved forward. With one arm, he embraced her. She was soft as if boneless, light as mist and smoke. This demonic son of heaven relished her appearance, her movements like a swaying willow, her coquettish glances. The imperial consort had to use both hands to embrace that son of heaven, who was as fierce as a tiger or wolf, just to keep her balance. Delicate garments, dry wood and raging fire. Gently lifting her robe, slowly caressing, her jade-like skin was revealed at her slender waist. Afterwards, Nguyen Ho buried his head in Li Fai's bosom, her jade-like arms holding him tightly. Sweat pouring down their bodies like rain. Sweat on her forehead dampened her coiled hair, her flushed face even more alluring and captivating. The beautiful, flower-like consort closed her eyes, her hands exploring Nguyen Ho's body, caressing him back and forth. Just as men appreciate the gracefulness of women, women too admire the strong, heroic physique of men. Ever since practicing the divine ability, Tran Hun Lei Hin Bo Hin, inherited from the ancient Tri Nyan country, Nguyen Ho's physique had grown stronger day by day. Previously, Nguyen Ho had always believed that if a man was too brawny, he would look clumsy and unsightly. But that was only because he had seen too many grotesque and repulsive forms. A truly healthy person, free from illness and worry, when able to unleash the true strength of their body, would naturally not appear crude or clumsy, but would exhibit a rugged beauty, like a fierce tiger descending a mountain, a leopard in the forest, or a fine steed capable of traveling 1,000 li in a day. A single glance would make one feel their lines were dazzlingly beautiful. No one would perceive them as clumsy or cumbersome. Powerful, possessing strength. Naturally, that is beautiful. After absorbing strength from that wondrous ancient technique, although Nguyen Ho did not develop any transcendent, otherworldly abilities, His physique had indeed become progressively more robust. He even seemed to have undergone another growth spurt, becoming considerably taller. When clothed, apart from his tall and handsome appearance, the changes in him were not apparent, but when he moved, he was like a tiger, a leopard, or a fine steed, exuding a sense of immense power. In this regard, the consort lying beside Nguyen Ho could be said to have the most profound understanding. Li Fai, having caught her breath, finally opened her gentle eyes, looked at Nguyen Ho, and said, "Your Majesty, after practicing martial arts recently, you feel even more heroic." Nguyen Ho, when I fell into the water, I was in a daze, as if in a dream. Fortunately, I was enlightened by the manifestation of ancestor Gao Yao. He told me that I must now prioritize the state and the common people. Without the slightest negligence. Upon hearing this, I was drenched in sweat, overcome with shame. So, following the ancestors' guidance, I have done a few things, and it seems I've had some success. Whether Gao Yao was truly Nguyen Ho's ancestor, he did not know, but the imperial tombs of the Dai Tin dynasty had all been desecrated. The dragon throne reduced to ashes, his ancestors had all turned to smoke. At least, these revered ancestors of Dai Tin would not manifest themselves and expose his lies. Hearing Nguyen Ho's words, Li Fai had no doubt about their authenticity. "Your Majesty has received the favor of heaven and is blessed by your revered ancestors. You will surely continue the achievements of Tuyen Quang and restore the great enterprise of Dai Tin." At this point, Li Fai suddenly showed hesitation, then said in a low voice, "Yesterday, my father came to visit." Nguyen Ho, naturally knowing her father had visited, maintained a calm demeanor and said, "Was it so you could whisper in my ear? To ask when he might become prime minister?" Li Fai immediately rose and knelt on the bed. "How would I dare?" Nguyen Ho pulled Li Fai into his embrace. "Get up. We won't talk about state affairs. Only family matters. The imperial father-in-law wishes to be prime minister. I am, of course, pleased in my heart. After all, we are all one family." Hearing Nguyen Ho say this, Li Fai felt as if she had eaten honey. "Li Fai, then your Majesty means." Nguyen Ho sighed. "However, I must also listen to the opinions of the high officials in court. And there is that Grand General, pillar of the state, who holds significant military power and guards the border fortress. All those people want to be prime minister. Even if I am willing, some matters cannot be decided by me alone. Li Fai, your Majesty's words are golden and jade, with a single imperial edict. How could those people dare not obey?" Nguyen Ho said nothing, only shook his head. "My dear consort, you have never been an official, you wouldn't understand these matters." These words from Nguyen Ho caused the storm already raging in the court over the prime minister's position to become even more ferocious. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Thai Feel Good Cultivation Audio Channel Chapter Nguyen Ho was practicing his calligraphy when suddenly a commotion could be heard from outside. Nguyen Ho had excellent hearing, even through several layers of doors. He could discern the activity outside. This was partly because everyone else in the hall was trying to remain silent. "Making no noise, Your Highness, Your Highness. His Majesty is currently busy with state affairs." Nguyen Ho looked up towards the outside. Although he only heard the eunuch's attempts to stop someone, he seemed to already know who it was. "Let her in." As soon as she entered, Consort Li burst into tears, like a pear blossom drenched in rain, and knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty." Nguyen Ho gestured for the palace maid beside her to help her up, then bade her come closer. At the same time, he covered the characters he had just written and stepped out from behind his writing desk. Quote, "What is the meaning of this? Why are you crying like this?" Consort Li, weeping, recounted. "I heard that someone in court has slandered my father, accusing him of colluding with Nguyen Han to plot a rebellion, and that your Majesty has already sent people to arrest him." Ever since Nguyen Ho had shown his intention to appoint Li Hongdao as prime minister. Subsequently, Li Hongdao's faction became extremely agitated, making frequent moves recently. It seemed as if, even before securing the premiership, They had already begun to publicly proclaim their influence to the world. But how could the other two factions tolerate Li Hongdao becoming prime minister? Especially the local magnate faction, which had always been fragmented, instantly united against Li Hongdao. Li Hongdao was the royal father-in-law. His status was quite unique. Much like the imperial relatives and the officials who had once rallied under Nguyen Ho's banner. Weren't they essentially Nguyen Ho's former subordinates? If he were to ascend to this premiership, it would immediately remind people of Nguyen Ho's influence. This figure had previously suppressed them to the point where they couldn't even raise their heads. How could this not instill fear and apprehension in them? Furthermore, the two sides had recently completely torn off all pretenses. If Li Hongdao were to become prime minister, they would be the first to be dealt with. Even if we can't become prime minister, we absolutely cannot let Li Hongdao become prime minister. And so, the entire imperial court attacked Li Hongdao, even unearthing considerable evidence of his crimes. Li Hongdao had originally been part of Nguyen Ho's household in the past. If one truly dug into it, how could there be no connection? Thus, recently in the imperial court, Li Hongdao found himself in dire straits. Piles upon piles of memorials attacking him were continuously presented to Nguyen Ho. For some matters, there were not only witnesses but even material evidence. Nguyen Ho listened to his consort's tearful account, sighed, and pointed to the nearby table. Look at that pile over there. It's all related to the royal father-in-law. There are some things I don't believe, but for others, the evidence is irrefutable, and I cannot help but believe them. Instantly, Consort Li's face turned deathly pale. She had heard that among those matters, there was even the grave crime of treason. Moreover, although Nguyen Ho's past deeds were over, what he had done was still very clear to everyone in the court. High and low, that beautiful consort's body went limp. But at this moment, Nguyen Ho changed his tone and said reassuringly, "However, despite having personal ambitions, the royal father-in-law has not lost his sense of public duty. The royal father-in-law still knows clearly that there are some matters he absolutely cannot get involved in." Consort Li felt as if she had grasped a life-saving straw. "Your Majesty, my father would absolutely never do anything to wrong you. It's just that he's a bit old and muddled. And in some matters, he doesn't distinguish between what's important and what's not." Nguyen Ho nodded slightly. "After all, we are family. You may return first. I will give further thought to the royal father-in-law's situation and see how to arrange things appropriately." Consort Li wept profusely, repeatedly pleading. She no longer dared to mention the matter concerning the prime minister's position. Nor did she dare to subtly probe Nguyen Ho's thoughts. Nguyen Ho said, "My beloved consort, if there is nothing else, you may return first. I will come to see you after I finish with state affairs." Consort Li did not dare to linger. "I shall take my leave." Consort Li withdrew with her attendants, while Nguyen Ho put away all those memorials. With these, Nguyen Ho could, at any time, use them as a pretext to dismiss Li Hongdao. The night was late. Nguyen Ho finally finished his state affairs and went to the inner palace. It was past midnight, yet the lamps in the courtyard and outside were still lit, as if waiting for something. Seeing the entourage from afar, a palace maid in the courtyard immediately went in to report to the consort. "Who is restless? Your Highness, His Majesty has arrived." Compared to a few days ago, Consort Li had changed somewhat. Not only was her attitude more respectful and obedient, but her service to Nguyen Ho was also more devoted. She no longer dared to display the noble air of a high-ranking consort of the inner palace, nor the pride of a noble lady from a prestigious family. She even seemed somewhat timid. The sounds from within the bed curtains grew louder, even becoming somewhat unrestrained. The palace maids outside dared not move an inch, their faces blushing. The next day, when the imperial court discussed state affairs, it began with a scene of officials attacking Li Hongdao, while Li Hongdao's faction, unwilling to accept defeat, vehemently counterattacked. "Your Majesty, that Li Hongdao is by no means a loyal minister. He cannot be entrusted with such responsibility. The disaster of Nguyen Ho in the past is still fresh in our minds. Even if your majesty is merciful enough to forgive, such a treacherous person absolutely cannot be pardoned. This Li Hongdao, along with that Nguyen Ho, this person, in his desire to unseat Li Hongdao, seemed to have cast aside all restraint. The matter of Nguyen Ho not being a rebel had already been settled. Yet now it was being brought up repeatedly. Although these people didn't explicitly mention treason, every sentence insinuated Li Hongdao's involvement in a rebellion. Finally, Nguyen Ho managed to regain control of the escalating situation. Alright, today, the matter to be discussed is not something else, but who should assume the position of Prime Minister of our great Shang. Nguyen Ho looked towards Li Hongdao, who was looking extremely troubled below, then sighed. It seems Minister Li is unable to handle this position of Prime Minister. Since that's the case, let's choose someone else. This time, Li Hongdao's faction below immediately became agitated, their eyes even turning bloodshot. Li Hongdao said nothing further. Seemingly having anticipated this, he felt it was already fortunate that he wasn't condemned for treason to the point of dying without a burial place. Before Nguyen Ho could even finish announcing the next name, a group of people in the court knelt down, exclaiming loudly, "Your Majesty, this cannot be." Nguyen Ho consecutively mentioned several names, each sparking fierce debate in the court. Some supported them, but even more said it was unacceptable. Nguyen Ho finally sighed and proposed an even more impossible name. Since it is so, how about the pillar of the state Grand General takes on this role of Prime Minister? This time, everyone's expression changed. "Your Majesty, please reconsider." Nguyen Ho, finally out of options, said resignedly, "Since it is so, all of you believe that no one is worthy of this position of Prime Minister. In that case, we shall establish the three departments, the Central Secretariat, the Chancellery, and the Department of State Affairs. Li Hongdao will serve as Director of the Central Secretariat, Huang Wei as Director of the Chancellery, and Pei Yuanzhao as Director of the Department of State Affairs." Let it be so. Everyone looked at each other, caught completely off guard by Nguyen Ho's words. What did this mean? No Prime Minister would be appointed? Li Hongdao reacted the quickest. He was the first to step forward. "Kneel, and accept the decree with gratitude. Your servant receives the decree." He was the first to respond. Another person, Huang Wei, also stepped out from the crowd and accepted the imperial decree. Things having reached this point, the outcome was already set. Nguyen Ho said nothing more and directly announced the dismissal of the court. Court dismissed. Chapter Nam. Nguyen Ho had just concluded his meeting with the officials. The three departments, Shangshu, Jiangsu, and Menxia, were gradually being established, and the Prime Minister's original authority was also being divided. This allowed Nguyen Ho to use his will to dominate and balance any faction, ultimately implementing the policies he desired, which brought him a sense of relief and joy. However, after court adjourned today, Nguyen Ho's mood was not particularly good. With a majestic gait, like a dragon moving and a tiger stepping, Nguyen Ho strode into the hall, passed through 3 sets of doors and a screen, then sat down on the chair behind the desk. After a long moment, he finally let out a cold snort. "I'll deal with you later. You disobedient beasts." From the very beginning today, in the imperial court, the officials had requested Nguyen Ho to perform sacrificial rites at the late emperor's mausoleum. They said that the Son of Heaven, having inherited the late emperor's mandate, could not forget the late emperor's will. Essentially, this was because the officials had reacted to Nguyen Ho's series of maneuvers to abolish the position of Prime Minister, which had led to an excessive growth of imperial power. Thus, they had joined forces in return to restrain Nguyen Ho. It could also be said that this was the backlash after Nguyen Ho abolished the chancellorship. And the so-called inheriting the late emperor's mandate, of course, meant obediently sitting on high like a puppet figure, while the affairs of the court could simply be handed over to a group of virtuous ministers to manage. Nguyen Ho did not get angry at this time. He still needed the entire court of virtuous ministers to help him manage state affairs properly. The major external enemies had not yet been dealt with, so some internal issues could only be temporarily set aside. There, He had only been seated for a short while when someone from outside delivered a memorial. Those who could directly present memorials to Nguyen Ho were either individuals he had personally instructed, or their matters pertained to important affairs. Nguyen Ho. Who is it? The attendant below replied, Your Majesty. It is the pillar of state. Great General. Nguyen Ho. Present it. Opening it, he saw it was a memorial from the pillar of state. Great General Bui Nguyen Kiu. Declining the position of Shongshu Ling, Nguyen Ho had, in front of all civil and military officials, appointed Bui Nguyen Kiu to this post of Shongshu Ling, and then immediately sent someone with the edict to invite Bui Nguyen Kiu to the western capital to assume office. Unfortunately, Nguyen Ho was once again rejected. Nguyen Ho didn't feel much regret from the start. He hadn't thought that a single edict of his could summon Bui Nguyen Kiu to the capital. It was merely an attempt. Now it seemed that the position of Shongshu Ling was far from enough to entice the other party. Thinking of this, Nguyen Ho even felt a slight pang of regret. If he had previously offered Bui Nguyen Kiu the position of his prime minister, would he have come? However, Nguyen Ho had not chosen this option before because he felt that if he pushed too hard, it would backfire if Bui Nguyen Kiu were pushed to desperation at this time, which would not be good. He needed time. He needed stability, not chaos. After reading the memorial, his thoughts churned. Nguyen Ho finally put the memorial down. The pillar of state, great general, guards a region. It is indeed not easy for him to leave his post. In that case, let the great general hold the position of Shongshu Ling remotely. The attendant below replied, Yes. There was pressure within the court, and pressure outside it as well. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho wished he had 100,000 elite cavalrymen at his command, to charge forth and slaughter all enemies as if cutting melons and chopping vegetables. Then, with unstoppable might, he would return and begin the extravagant and debauched life of a decadent ruler. Unfortunately, these 100,000 cavalrymen could not be conjured out of thin air. The official below was stepping back, preparing to leave, when Nguyen Ho suddenly called him back. Wait a moment. The official immediately stepped forward, bowed again, and said, Does Your Majesty have any further instructions? Nguyen Ho nodded slightly. Have someone make preparations regarding the sacrificial rites at the late emperor's mausoleum. The official bowed deeply. Your servant will immediately go down and arrange it. Late at night, Nguyen Ho finished his bath and changed into a set of white undergarments. Embroidered on the white undergarments was a design of ink-black bamboo. Situated on the shoulder and back, the soft silk fabric clung closely to Nguyen Ho's firm muscles, like those of a prized hunting leopard. Only his long hair was something Nguyen Ho was still not quite used to. Even though palace attendants usually took care of it, when he wasn't receiving important guests, Nguyen Ho would simply tie his hair up with a golden circlet. Too lazy to style it, Nguyen Ho waved his hand, ordering the servants in the room to withdraw. All of you, out. Recently, Nguyen Ho had been indulging in music and song every night, but since he was soon to go to the imperial mausoleum to offer sacrifices to the late emperor, Nguyen Ho naturally had to appear proper, at least to put on a facade in front of others. It was just that. He didn't know if it was due to his overly robust physique, or if there was some issue with the power inherited from that donkey-headed demon. But Nguyen Ho found it difficult to sleep late at night. It clearly wasn't hot yet, but he felt an unbearable dryness and heat. At this moment, a strange whisper came from outside. Like weeping, like lamenting, Nguyen Ho looked out. The lights in the hall had been extinguished, leaving it dark. Only the ancient mirror placed in the hall emitted a faint glow. Nguyen Ho stood up, followed the sound past the screen, and lifted the silk curtain. Finally, behind a red pillar, he saw the source of the sound. It was a girl dressed in white. The girl's long hair cascaded down to the ground, soft as silk. The simple white robe should have conveyed an ethereal elegance, but on her, due to her overly graceful and curvaceous figure, it paradoxically created the opposite effect. Nguyen Ho asked, Who are you? Are you the mirror spirit on duty today? The other party nodded. Nguyen Ho asked again, as the mirror spirit on duty. Why are you sniffling here? Have you detected some evil entity? Or sensed something amiss? Seeing the mirror spirit on duty in such a state, Nguyen Ho's first reaction was whether she was trying to warn him of something. After all, that was their responsibility. Bai Company, weeping sorrowfully, told Nguyen Ho that her name was Bai County Shen, originally a deity from Mount Feng Huang. Later, she followed Prince Ma, guarding the netherworld. Not long ago, Prince Ma was expelled by Nguyen Ho, losing his divine domain in the netherworld. Even the nether soldiers and wandering spirits under Prince Ma were dealt with at the same time. Now, Madame Ma had become a servant girl under the celestial maiden Miao Shang. The celestial maiden Miao Shang had forced her to guard the mirror, to obey Nguyen Ho's commands. If she dared to show any negligence or provide inadequate reception, the celestial maiden threatened to place her soul in a palace lantern to be burned for 100 years. She was terrified, hence her incessant sobbing. Nguyen Ho looked at this woman, not expecting her to be no ordinary ghost, but a renowned deity. Nguyen Ho asked her, "You are a deity on Mount Feng Huang. What divine powers or magical arts do you possess?" The woman replied, "This humble servant once had some followers in the mountains. These people used secret arts to cultivate a group of old man donkeys, which have now bred for several generations and gathered deep within those mountain ranges. This servant can lead them out for your majesty's use." Nguyen Ho, are they the same kind of donkey demons from the donkey cavalry? The woman, exactly those. Upon hearing this, Nguyen Ho was overjoyed. He had only asked casually to see what divine powers or magical arts she possessed, thinking they might be useful later. Unexpectedly, he had uncovered such news. A herd of variant donkey demons, nurtured by mystical demonic arts, could be of great use, whether as pack animals or mounts. Moreover, this type of mount had already been proven. The donkey cavalry of old had relied on them to dominate. Nguyen Ho immediately paid more attention to this Bai County Shen and told her to stand up. "Stop crying. Stand up. Let me see you. Tell me clearly about these old man donkeys." He had to ask carefully what exactly these old man donkeys were, and what kind of secret arts were needed to control them. The other party stood up, and Nguyen Ho was instantly stunned. When she was squatting and crying pitifully, he had thought she was a petite and lovely person, just with a slightly more sensual figure. Who would have thought that when she stood up, she was surprisingly tall, over 1.80 meters, her tall and slender figure somewhat imposing. Nguyen Ho felt that if he gave her a spear, she could probably wield it well, capable of charging out of the hall to slay enemies. Yet she was the type to hide in a corner and sob. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Feel Good Cultivation Audio Channel Chapter Sao Celestial Maiden Palace. Heavily guarded inside and out, Nguyen Ho gazed at the mural in the deepest part and spoke. Behind him were layers of mysterious silk curtains. Further out was the grand hall, where the statue of the celestial maiden was worshipped. Before the statue, incense coils were burning, their fragrance wafting all the way to where he stood. The illusion of Du Hong celestial maiden floated down from the wall, coming to rest before Nguyen Ho. "Is this what you meant? That Prince Ma wishes to offer his enterprise to me?" As soon as Nguyen Ho opened his mouth, he brought up the matter Du Hong celestial maiden had alluded to earlier. That woman, though she had spoken very truthfully during the night, and later confessed everything honestly under Nguyen Ho's questioning, he still wasn't entirely convinced. So, early in the morning, he had rushed to the Celestial Maiden Palace to clarify. The Celestial Maiden smiled and asked, "Not entirely so, but your Majesty is very pleased, aren't you?" Nguyen Ho, "Pleased. I am indeed pleased. But this donkey, I haven't even gotten my hands on it yet, let alone whether I like it or not." Du Hong Celestial Maiden, "It seems your Majesty is indeed pleased. As for that old donkey, it is in Phong Hoang Mountain, and sooner or later, your Majesty will capture it." Hearing this, the matter of the old donkey seemed to be true. Nguyen Ho couldn't hide the joy on his face. This Prince Ma was truly generous. First, he gifted a treasured mirror. Then he gifted a divine mansion. Now, he was even offering his own wife, along with a mount that could be ridden. Let alone sworn brothers bound by life and death. Even an adoptive father would not be as generous as him. Nguyen Ho. Those old donkeys have bred for several generations. Are there any changes compared to before? The celestial maiden said, these old donkeys, though created through dark arts, because the donkey army of old that campaigned across the land left behind a formidable reputation. They are considered a renowned demonic breed in the 9 provinces, worthy of being recorded in the classic of mountains and seas. Now, although this demonic breed's bloodline has weakened, it has become a true variant species that can be cultivated. After all, ordinary demonic beasts, no matter how powerful or possessing vast supernatural abilities, few can serve as mounts. And such variant species that form herds and can serve as mounts are even rarer to find than demonic beasts. If spurred on by that secret art, they might even transform into true demons again. Nguyen Ho. If that's the case, why haven't these old donkeys been captured by others sooner? And why hasn't anyone gone to Phong Hoang Mountain to search for them? Du Hong Celestial Maiden. These old donkeys, without that Bok County Than, cannot be controlled by others. And without her performing the supernatural arts, according to the secret methods, this donkey army would be difficult to train. Previously, that Prince Ma was able to seize the netherworld territories beneath Tai Kin. Partly due to this donkey army, he kept this move in reserve, waiting for his strategic play in the land of Tai Tan. It's just that before he could make this risky move, Your Majesty had already overturned the chessboard. Nguyen Ho. What other strategic plays did this Prince Ma intend to make? Du Hong Celestial Maiden, supporting the dragon. The importance of that Bok County then instantly rose another level. Nguyen Ho. This Bok County then is very important. Du Hong Celestial Maiden. That depends on who uses her. In Your Majesty's hands versus in the hands of that Prince Ma. It's a world of difference. Nguyen Ho felt a flicker of excitement in his heart at Du Hong Celestial Maiden's words. If he could bring back those old donkeys, and with Bok County then in his hands, he could quickly train a usable cavalry unit following the ancient donkey army's training methods. He recalled that back then, this variant species army, even when the Dai Tin dynasty had not yet fallen, had campaigned north and south, and ultimately, managed to break through encirclement from all sides and escape to the land of Tai Tan. So, he spoke, it seems I still have to make a trip to Phong Hoang Mountain. Nguyen Ho would soon have to leave the capital to pay respects at the late emperor's mausoleum. It was a good opportunity to conveniently visit Phong Hoang Mountain on the way. Perhaps he could subdue those old donkeys. The palace city of Tai Kin was built in imitation of the old imperial city of Dai Tin. Below the Chu Tuok Gate were 3 large gates. The city walls were over 10 jong high. Most officials entered the imperial city from here. Hoang Hoi, newly appointed as palace attendant censor, entered the long path, and it took him about a quarter of an hour to traverse it. Afterwards, he passed through several more doors, finally arriving at the recently established Hall of Political Affairs. When Hoang Hoi saw that Li Hoang Dao had arrived early, his expression immediately soured a little. He thought to himself, this old fellow, he's been so diligent lately. But after stepping through the door, he immediately clasped his hands in greeting, and the other party also stood up with a smile. Recently, the Son of Heaven had been summoning the court officials here for discussions. Hoang Hoi and Li Hoang Dao, along with some scribes from the Hall of Political Affairs, would also be on duty here every day. In addition, there were some officials summoned by the Son of Heaven for questioning regarding court affairs. These individuals were not permanently stationed here. Hoang Hoi glanced at the documents on his desk. Then, restless, looked aside. As a result, he saw Li Hoang Dao with the exact same expression. Recently, the matter that concerned them most was the Son of Heaven's ancestral worship at the late emperor's mausoleum. After a period of dramatic upheavals and setbacks, the greatest wish of the entire court now was to make the recently restless Son of Heaven become more compliant. just like the late emperor, who listened to whatever they said. That was what the court officials desired. The Son of Heaven just needed to do what a Son of Heaven should do. The rest could be left to them. Although Nguyen Ho and Li Hoang Dao disliked each other on this matter, the two were in agreement. Nguyen Ho put on a cautious air, and after a long while, he opened his mouth to ask the scribe beside him, "Has there been any decree from His Majesty's side?" Nguyen Ho didn't specify what decree, but everyone present knew what it was about. The scribe, "No imperial edict has been issued." Nguyen Ho grew somewhat restless, stood up, and said, "What does His Majesty mean by this? Does he not even care for basic filial piety anymore?" Things having come to this point, no matter what, they had to make the Son of Heaven yield. Nguyen Ho looked at Li Hoang Dao. "Lord Li, why do you say nothing? If His Majesty is allowed to act so willfully, how can this be? The ancestral enterprise, the rules passed down by the ancestors, are they still needed or not?" Li Hoang Dao pondered for a moment, then said, "Tomorrow, you and I shall submit a joint memorial again." At this moment, a eunuch entered the Hall of Political Affairs, puffed out his chest, and announced in a loud voice, "His Majesty has an imperial edict. Where is the Minister of Rights?" Another official on duty in the Hall of Political Affairs immediately stepped forward, knelt on the ground, and received the edict concerning a series of tasks for the imperial mausoleum worship. The others also knelt in obeisance. After rising, some of them had visibly elated expressions, as if they had just won a major battle. Nguyen Ho was overjoyed, and Li Hoang Dao also nodded repeatedly in agreement. His Majesty is truly virtuous. Indeed, His Majesty still possesses the demeanor of the late emperor, and is as wise and virtuous as the late emperor. The Son of Heaven had admitted his mistake. So, next, as usual, they should once again put the reins on this unruly horse that was about to break free. That day, civil and military officials waited before the Chu Tuok gate. All sorts of banners, musical instruments, and guards forming the ceremonial procession had arrived, but from beginning to end, there was no sign of the Son of Heaven. The officials murmured amongst themselves, somewhat at a loss, "Why hasn't His Majesty arrived yet? Where has His Majesty gone? What's happened?" The officials were all somewhat uneasy. Just then, waves of thundering hooves and hurried footsteps approached, and the officials saw the Imperial Guard advancing in formation. The one leading them, clad in armor and riding a sturdy horse, was none other than the Son of Heaven, Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho led 3,000 newly reorganized and retrained Imperial Guards. He looked nothing like a Son of Heaven, but more like a military general commanding an army, preparing to leave the capital just like that. As the army formation drew near, the atmosphere outside the Chu Tuok gate instantly changed. Everyone looked at those dark, imposing figures, feeling as if the sky itself had darkened. In an instant, everyone once again recalled that night, when the Son of Heaven had led a great army to fight his way back into the capital city, and Prime Minister Nguyen Han had been burned to death in a sea of fire. Chapter Bay before the Vermilion Bird Gate. Originally, Grand Chancellor Li Hongdao had been standing at the very front, but in an instant, he dared not speak further, trembling as he bowed his head and kowtowed on the ground. Instead, it was Huang Wei who stepped forward to question. Quote, "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? Do you intend to pay respects to the late emperor clad in armor, blade in hand?" Huang Wei was not unattractive in appearance. At this moment, standing before everyone to question the Son of Heaven for not adhering to propriety, he displayed the upright and forthright spirit characteristic of a man of letters. At least, that was how it appeared in the eyes of many high officials. Nguyen Ho, I received a dream message from the late emperor. Recently, demons have been causing disturbances, preventing the late emperor from resting peacefully in his mausoleum. I have consulted the spirits, and they advised holding a grand Nuo exorcism ceremony. At that time, I will personally wear a divine mask, lead the troops, and use the exorcism techniques of the Nuo ceremony to slay any profane deities and malevolent spirits that dare disturb the late emperor's peace. Huang Wei. This does not conform to ritual propriety. Nguyen Ho, Minister Huang, do you wish for me to defy the late emperor's decree? To stand idly by while those malevolent spirits disturb his mausoleum, preventing him from resting in peace? Do you wish for me to be an unfilial son? Nguyen Ho looked at Huang Wei coldly, his gaze filled with killing intent. Huang Wei stammered, tongue-tied and unable to respond, ultimately not daring to say anything more. Nguyen Ho gestured with his hand, telling Huang Wei to step aside. Quote, "Do you understand the late emperor better? Or do I?" Nguyen Ho looked at the others and declared in a loud voice, "In this world, no one understands the late emperor's intentions better than I." Recently, Huang Wei had consistently used the late emperor to intimidate Nguyen Ho, using filial piety to bind him. Now, the tables had turned, and Nguyen Ho had checkmated him with the same tactic. Regarding the interpretation of the late emperor's will and filial piety in this matter, Nguyen Ho held the ultimate authority. Seeing Huang Wei speechless, someone from Huang Hui's faction stepped forward, intending to cite the classics of sages and worthies of the past to debate with Nguyen Ho. The sages taught that the right to interpret the late emperor's words did not belong to them, so they could only resort to the right to interpret the words of the sages and worthies, which, at least, was still in their hands. But as soon as he opened his mouth, Nguyen Ho's gaze locked onto him, cutting him off. At this moment, Chu Ji County from the nearby arrest squad understood the meaning in Nguyen Ho's eyes and immediately stepped forward. Quote, "Before departing, His Majesty told me that the spirits revealed that the malevolent entities disturbing the late emperor's mausoleum have possessed court officials and are hiding within the court. It was predicted that someone would surely try to stop His Majesty. It seems that evil spirit has now jumped out. One is Huang Wei, and there is another named Lu Wenjiao. Arrest them all for me." Chu Jiaiko's voice was chillingly cold, like that of a demon. His words were like a bone-chilling gust of wind, instantly causing the minds of the assembled officials to buzz, and some felt their legs go weak. This Chu Ji County was indeed a promising talent Nguyen Ho had previously identified, so audacious that he even dared to arrest Huang Wei on the spot. However, Nguyen Ho did not intend to take things that far. Nguyen Ho, Minister Huang, was merely a bit impetuous and did not understand my filial piety. Of course, he could not possibly be possessed by a demon. If Minister Huang was not, then it must be the other one. A group of soldiers, fierce as tigers and wolves, rushed forward and dragged away the one who had just been saying, "The sages taught that." A man whose name and official rank Nguyen Ho hadn't even known before. Then, the sorcerers of the Celestial Maiden Palace stepped forward and, in front of everyone, poured muddy water into Lu Wenjiao's mouth, then whipped him until he screamed, "Can't see it." Huang Wei stared, dumbfounded, completely understanding what kind of person Nguyen Ho was. Here, before the Vermilion Bird Gate, in front of everyone, just when everyone wanted to give him a show of force, Nguyen Ho, clad in armor and wielding a blade, had turned the tables and given them all a show of force. He let the entire civil and military court know that no matter how sharp the tongue, it was no match for swords and spears. Hoo-hoo, accompanied by ceremonial music, the honor guard cleared the way. A vast army escorted Nguyen Ho, with the officials silently following behind as they set off. This time, their destination was the northern foot of the Phoenix Emperor mountain range, where the late emperor's mausoleum was located at the Lotus Temple, an imperial temple built by royal decree. But with so many people and officials, they naturally couldn't travel as they had before. They stopped after only a short journey. That night, Nguyen Ho and the officials rested at a villa on Li Hongdao's estate. Imperial father-in-law, this is truly a fine place. The villa was built amidst a bamboo forest. The bamboo on both sides so dense it felt as if even a rabbit could not pass through. Though it was still daylight, looking into the depths of the bamboo forest's gaps revealed an inky blackness. That dark, inaccessible place gave the impression of another world, separate from the mortal realm. This villa must have cost a fortune to build, yet it did not appear ostentatious. but rather was filled with the poetic charm and profound heritage of the Central Plains' great families. Li Hongdao. This is an estate bestowed upon my Li family by the late emperor. Today, to be graced by your majesty's visit, is truly a blessing of 3 lifetimes for this servant. Nguyen Ho. Regarding today's events, imperial father-in-law, your decision not to side with Huang Wei has pleased me greatly. Indeed, family is different. A cold sweat instantly broke out all over Li Hongdao's body. It was all Huang Hui's own presumptuous decision. This servant was completely unaware. Nguyen Ho said no more and walked into the villa with Li Hongdao. The main gate of the villa was built on a high slope. To enter, one had to cross a wooden bridge over a flowing stream below and a winding stone-paved path. It was precisely this winding and somewhat inconvenient path that further highlighted the tranquility and mystery of the courtyard, making one anticipate the exquisiteness within even more. Nguyen Ho looked relaxed. Come, let's go take a look. A smile appeared on Li Hongdao's face. Your Majesty. Please. Li Hongdao led the way. As soon as they entered the villa, they saw a group of beautiful women, like orioles and swallows. The one leading them bore a slight resemblance to Li Fei. Nguyen Ho glanced at Li Hongdao but said nothing more. This fellow hadn't been satisfied with just pushing Li Fei into the harem. He wanted to push more women in. Meanwhile, in another building near the villa where the officials were resting, Huang Hui's faction was currently gathered. Regarding the events of that morning, these individuals had initially been terrified. On the journey, they had been as silent as a flock of sparrows, not daring to utter a single word. Now, gathered together in one place, they began to grow indignant. Since they were all among their own, their words became somewhat unrestrained. How could His Majesty treat us like this? Poor Lu Wenjiao. To be humiliated like that in public. I wonder if he'll even survive to return. Insulting men of letters. This is truly an insult to men of letters. His Majesty said Lu Wenjiao was possessed by an evil spirit. Could it be true? If you want to condemn someone, why worry about a pretext? Even if there really are spirits causing trouble, why would they target His Majesty? There's a saying, when a country is about to fall, evil omens abound. Watch your words. Watch your words. That Li Hongdao faced His Majesty's outrageous behavior without saying a word. If there are treacherous ministers in the court, he must be the ringleader. The voices grew louder, each person either filled with indignation, their faces contorted in anger, or sighing incessantly. Their resentment towards the Son of Heaven also grew stronger. Just then, someone in the crowd began to analyze the recent events both inside and outside the court. He was a man of about 40, dressed in a red robe, with a handsome beard that was much admired at the time. Quote, His Majesty's recent conduct is completely different from his usual self, as if he were two different people. It's truly very strange. Although His Majesty's words and actions have been somewhat preposterous, his recent deeds bear the mark of a powerful ruler. Could it be that he was feigning it all before? Emulating King Zhuang of Chu, who for 3 years did not fly, but once he took wing, he astounded the world? A young man beside him heard this and immediately brought up a recent rumor. It said that after His Majesty fell into the water, he was enlightened by the manifestation of Gao Yao. Could it be true? This time, everyone looked at each other in stunned silence. The recent events surrounding Nguyen Ho were indeed too strange, and his transformation too great, making it difficult for people not to believe these things. Seeing that the assembly, originally intended to criticize the Son of Heaven's absurdity and rally everyone to Huang Hui's side, was gradually going off track. At this moment, a person beside Huang Wei stood up. This was a clean-shaven, pale-faced man, round and plump, his eyes bulging as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. Much like his corpulent figure. What spirits and demons? There's a saying that scholars do not speak of karikiranchin, strange, forceful, disorderly, or spiritual phenomena. You are all important ministers of the court. How can you speak such nonsense? His Majesty first believed in Nguyen Han raising some kind of hell ghost shaman sect. And now he's brought out some celestial maiden. and even believes the shamanistic pronouncements of the celestial maiden palace, using the excuse of demonic possession to humiliate court officials. How can such behavior be compared to that King Zhuang of Chu? It's truly sad, truly regrettable. We possess loyal hearts, yet His Majesty turns a blind eye. When will our great Sheng ever? As the man spoke, he became moved by his own words and shed tears. At this, the others either shed tears in sympathy or sighed with resentment, or they hypocritically stepped forward to offer consolation, saying that the Son of Heaven was merely temporarily misguided, and as long as they remonstrated, they could surely guide the Son of Heaven back to the righteous path. What the crowd did not realize was that outside the room, crouching at the corner of the wall, a figure was recording all their words and actions. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Feel Good Cultivation Audio Channel Chapter Tam, Your Majesty. These are the words they spoke tonight. Chu Ji County presented a book to Nguyen Ho. It meticulously recorded the words spoken by Hoang Hui's group at tonight's gathering. Even the sitting postures and expressions of these individuals were described. Not only Hoang Hoi, but Chu Ji County also held another book detailing the movements of Li Hoang Dao. Nguyen Ho picked it up, the sound of rustling paper filling the air as he flipped through the pages. Rustle, rustle. When he saw that someone suspected the changes in him, Nguyen Ho frowned. Then, seeing someone mention his fabrication of Cao Dao's manifestation, his brow relaxed slightly. From the events that had transpired since early morning, coupled with his arrangements for surveillance and the arrest of those within the residence, what he had been wary of from the start was not that these people wanted to use the late emperor to intimidate him. Compared to that, Nguyen Ho was more concerned that these individuals suspected his true identity. They might want to use the matter of sacrificial rites at the late emperor's mausoleum to set some kind of trap for him. After all, although the ancestral temple and imperial mausoleum of Dai Tin had been destroyed, the late emperor's tomb remained intact in the western lands of this city. In this world where ghosts and gods ran rampant, who knew if the late emperor might manifest and expose his true face? That of an otherworldly celestial demon. Reaching the end, Nguyen Ho flipped back a few pages. He pointed to the name of the person who said he imitated King Zhuang of Chu, praising him as having the bearing of a great sovereign, and then asked, Nguyen Ho, what is the background of this Tran Quang, and what is his relationship with Hoang Hoi? Chu Ji Ko. Tran Quang hails from the Lang Fong Tran family. He has no direct relationship with Hoang Hoi, but they are both prominent clans in the western area of the city. Nguyen Ho, the Lang Fong Tran family. It sounds somewhat familiar. Chu Ji Ko. The last time Your Majesty returned to the capital from a hunt, you stayed at Thatch Kiu Manor. That is the manor of the Lang Fong Tran family. It's just that the Tran family members don't often reside there. Hearing this, Nguyen Ho had some recollection. Nguyen Ho. So, this Tran family and Hoang Hui's Hoang family, although both are prominent clans from the western area of the city, they don't get along? Chu Ji Ko. The Lang Fong Tran family has declined somewhat in recent years, partly due to suppression by the Hoang family. Nguyen Ho put the book down, his expression thoughtful. You may leave. Regarding the Lang Fong Tran family, and this Tran Quang, investigate them thoroughly. Chu Ji Ko. Yes. Nguyen Ho walked through the triple main hall. Currently, there were no female family members in the courtyard, only eunuchs and guards. Passing through the main hall, flanked by two side houses and 2 rows of corridors, he then entered a flower garden with a distinct and different scenery. The design of the flower garden was truly ingenious. From the end of the side house corridor, a rockery over 10 feet high blocked the view. Like a screen, that rockery even connected to the eaves, transforming into a pillar supporting the curved roof. And the more it concealed, the more it piqued one's curiosity about the spring scenery within. Nguyen Ho entered the flower garden. Both sides within the garden were obscured by the rockery, but one could see a pond deep to the left, with fish swimming leisurely inside. Passing through the flower garden, he went past a tea viewing pavilion, ascended a spiral staircase, and arrived at the two-story small building behind the pond. This place was where Nguyen Ho rested. Most of the furnishings in the room had been arranged beforehand, but many items were brought by Nguyen Ho from the palace. The most conspicuous among them was the illusory reality void mirror. Nguyen Ho rubbed the bronze mirror, and behind him appeared a celestial maiden in purple robes, beautiful as an immortal, who bowed to Nguyen Ho. The purple-robed celestial maiden, Your Majesty. What do you require? Nguyen Ho said, just now, passing by that bamboo forest, I felt something strange. Do you have a way to investigate it? Earlier, when Nguyen Ho had looked closely at the gloom within that bamboo forest, the divine tiger spirit within his body had actually let out a roar. It had certainly sensed something. The purple-robed celestial maiden showed a troubled expression. Regarding this, I can only move within the room with the aid of this divine mirror. I have no way to go outside. The illusory reality void mirror only worked when placed in a room. Places where the sky served as a canopy and the ground as a mat naturally didn't count. Therefore, this on-duty deity in the mirror could only appear in the room and could not venture outside. Although it had drawbacks, it also had advantages. That is, any demons or malevolent spirits in the room wishing to harm Nguyen Ho would not find it so easy. Nguyen Ho understood. If evil entities cause trouble, can they invade this place? The purple-robed celestial maiden, with this servant here, they certainly cannot approach Your Majesty. This celestial maiden once held a noble status, a deity worshipped by an entire nation, having received incense and offerings for countless hundreds of years. Now, she referred to herself as a servant to Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho had just begun to feel what it was like to be an emperor. The nobility of the Son of Heaven in the mortal realm. However, knowing that something stealthy was nearby, Nguyen Ho truly found it hard to be at ease. Nguyen Ho was not one to react passively. He had always been one to seize the initiative, to control others. Moreover, at this moment, with the divine mirror protecting him and the imperial guards stationed around, Nguyen Ho saw nothing to fear. Nguyen Ho, is there a way to provoke that thing in the bamboo forest a little? To see what exactly is causing trouble? The on-duty deity in the mirror, Your Majesty. Please wait a moment. Nguyen Ho gave orders, instructing his men to be on guard. Afterwards, the purple-robed celestial maiden lit incense, then danced around the censer. After dancing for a while, the purple-robed celestial maiden even began to float. Nguyen Ho increasingly felt that the power of the wondrous incense celestial maiden and the incense smoke were inseparable. That fragrance drifted downwards. Ordinary people could only smell the scent, but Nguyen Ho could see a layer of hazy mist descending from the tall pavilion. Nguyen Ho went outside, stood on the outer corridor, and looked down at the pond below. He saw that fragrant mist pass through the rockery and the pond, flow over the corridors and large rooms. Finally, it seeped into the dense bamboo forest outside the private courtyard. Within the gloom of the forest, so dense that even cunning rabbits and wild martins could not penetrate, something seemed to have been awakened. Duke Qian, let us depart. The pale-faced, beardless, portly man who had just been before Hoang Hui's group, weeping and lamenting how his sincere heart was overlooked by the Son of Heaven, while also indignantly decrying the Son of Heaven's outrageous actions, now bid farewell and prepared to leave. At this moment, his eye sockets were still red, and he was inwardly sighing that his talent, capable of making him a chief minister, was being squandered. He had gotten too into character. The more he acted, the more he believed it, truly seeing himself as a figure comparable to Bygone or the Duke of Zhou. As he left, he was somewhat reluctant. As if still unsatisfied, he pulled Hoang Hui's hand, shedding a few more tears. Oh, Duke Qian, when will you and I be able to fulfill our great ambitions? When will we realize the aspirations in our hearts? Sigh. No more talk. No more talk. When I meet the late emperor. Clearly, he hadn't drunk a single cup of wine, yet he seemed intoxicated. The others pulled this man along, finally leading him away. It was getting dark by now. They had been arranged to stay in another side courtyard behind the main building. Carrying lanterns, They walked along a small path behind, passing by a patch of bamboo forest. At this moment, a cold wind blew past, and everyone immediately felt their hairs stand on end, as if struck by a bad premonition. The pale-faced, portly man walked to the front. "Why have you stopped?" The lantern-bearer looked around. "Did you all hear anything?" Someone from behind said, "It sounds like someone is reciting poetry." Everyone got goosebumps, their scalps tingling. "Hiss, there's no one around here. Only a pond and a bamboo forest so dense even rabbits can't get through. Where would a poetry reader come from? Could it be a ghost?" The pale-faced, portly man snorted disdainfully. Besides, he himself had just declared that scholars do not discuss demons and ghosts. How could he be afraid now? Nonsense. We read the books of sages and cultivate a righteous aura. What are ghosts and gods that they would dare approach us? After speaking, he snatched the lantern from the person in front and strode forward. The soaring heroic spirit and the bellyful of resentment from the recent gathering had not yet dissipated. He took a deep breath, his eyes bulging and bloodshot. Quote, "If there really is a malevolent ghost, watch how I use the teachings of the sages. Use my body of righteous energy to drive that evil spirit away. Let His Majesty also know of the righteous aura upon us. Know who in the court are truly loyal ministers, and who are treacherous villains." Chapter Chin carrying a lantern. He walked in front. Before he had taken more than a few steps, a cold wind blew, and the chubby, pale-faced man's head immediately cleared considerably. In front of so many people, putting on a bit of a show was fine, but walking at the very front felt like being all alone, and this thought of pretense quickly faded. At this moment, his mind became rational. What if there really is a ghost? While he hesitated, someone from behind asked, "Why have you stopped walking?" The chubby, pale-faced man had no choice but to continue forward. But in his heart, he silently held a grudge against the person behind who had just urged him on. A sound from afar grew clearer and clearer, and now they could hear what the other party was saying. "Jingwei carries twigs in her beak to fill the vast ocean. Xingtian wields his shield and axe, his fierce ambition undiminished, and all living things." Hearing this sound, the chubby, pale-faced man also showed a look of joy. He said, listening to the voice, "The one reciting poetry must be a living person." The others thought so too. It was someone hiding somewhere they couldn't see. Perhaps a servant in the manor. But when he went around to investigate, the chubby, pale-faced man stood rooted to the spot, motionless. The people behind him, seeing he wasn't moving again, asked, "Why have you stopped again?" For a long moment, there was no reply. Someone from behind stepped forward and gave the chubby, pale-faced man a push. Unexpectedly, with this light push, something horrifying happened. The man's body tilted forward, but his head lolled backward and then fell off. Everyone stared wide-eyed, simultaneously letting out loud screams. Ah! The chubby, pale-faced man, who had just moments before proclaimed that scholars do not discuss ghosts and demons and possess a righteous aura, now had his head and body separated. His body fell forward, while his head clattered and rolled in front of the others. His eyes were wide open, as if he had seen something utterly terrifying. Quote, "He's dead. His head fell off. There's a ghost. There's a ghost." At this moment, hearing that reciting voice again, the men wished they could tightly cover their ears. They dared not return to the imperial villa alone through the bamboo forest. They were so scared they wet their pants and ran back. Nguyen Ho was not yet asleep, being attended by several servants in the estate. He then saw several men burst through the door, shouting loudly, "A ghost! There's a malevolent spirit lurking outside the courtyard." Nguyen Ho frowned, looking at the men who had stumbled in chaotically, and sternly shouted, "Nonsense! What kind of disgraceful behavior is this?" Then, he asked about the chubby, pale-faced man. The men pointed outside. "He's dead. His head has fallen off completely." One of them ran up, gasping for breath. A ghost took his head. Nguyen Ho was initially somewhat skeptical, but seeing their demeanor, which didn't seem feigned, he carefully observed them and asked, "Is it really true?" These men, including the chubby, pale-faced one, were not from prominent backgrounds, they were merely from local influential families. They might have possessed some wealth, but they had no real prestige, and their ancestors had mostly never held official positions. Relying on Hoang Hoi, they had obtained these official posts, which were mostly sinecures, their usual tasks involving waving flags and shouting support, or doing jobs that required exaggeration and embellishment. One couldn't rely on them for actual work, but at critical moments to bolster his prestige, they were useful. For instance, when Hoang Hoi previously needed people to pressure and suppress Tran Quang, they had performed very well. The men continuously wiped sweat from their foreheads and recounted the details once more. Then, they asked Hoang Hoi what should be done. One of them even invited Hoang Hoi to go take a look. After hearing this, how could Hoang Hoi dare to go? He hurriedly walked out of his courtyard, stood at the corner of an adjacent room, and peered over the courtyard wall into the darkness outside. The bamboo forest was a vast expanse, its far end connecting to the villa where the emperor was resting. The night wind rustled through the bamboo, and waves of cold air drifted from afar. Without a second thought, Hoang Hoi immediately said to one of them, "You, quickly go and report this matter to His Majesty, and see how His Majesty will handle it. Remember, do not mention that you came to my place." The men nodded and asked again, "When we meet His Majesty, what should we say?" Hoang Hoi replied, "Just tell His Majesty exactly what you told me." Then he said to another one of them, "You, go inside and shout, let the others know." This estate was not a single building but a large settlement housing hundreds or thousands of people managing vast agricultural fields. However, this settlement did not belong to the imperial court but to the Li family of Li Hongdao. Some central areas even had low walls surrounding them. In times of war and chaos, this could serve as a small fortress. At this very moment, Emperor Nguyen Ho was in the villa at the foot of the nearby mountain. The civil and military officials were on his left, the imperial guard stationed on his right. The man asked, "So, what should I shout?" Hoang Hoi was very impatient. Did this fool still not understand his meaning? Did he have to spell it out so clearly? "However, you stumbled in shouting just now. Go out and shout exactly like that again." Hoang Hoi wanted to escalate this matter, to see how Nguyen Ho would handle it. Hadn't the emperor claimed he was warned in a dream by the late emperor, thus staging such a show to intimidate the civil and military officials? Then let this matter be blown up. Let's see if that Nguyen Ho could subdue this malevolent spirit, one that could unknowingly take a person's head from their neck. If he couldn't subdue it, then everything that had happened before would be nullified, and the emperor's prestige would plummet. Even if he won, a court official dying at the emperor's feet due to a demon, wouldn't that also prove the emperor lacked virtue? The drama Nguyen Ho had staged before the Vermilion Bird Gate had already made Hoang Hoi extremely dissatisfied with Emperor Nguyen Ho. Before the men could even reach the villa where the emperor was resting, they saw that the imperial guard, in layer upon layer, had already surrounded the bamboo forest and the villa. Uat Tri Sung Vu glanced at the men, immediately had them stopped, and quickly learned of their intentions. A guard cupped his fist and knelt on one knee. "General, someone reports the presence of an evil entity." Uat Tri Sung Vu learned the news of the chubby, pale-faced man's death. "Excellent. So it was hiding in the forest over there." Uat Tri Sung Vu immediately led his men to the scene. The body of the chubby, pale-faced man was not found, only a pool of blood. Uat Tri Sung Vu immediately ordered his men to surround this forest, burn incense to exorcise evil, and even had them set fire to the bamboo forest. Very quickly, the thing in the bamboo forest escaped. "Fire arrows." Uat Tri Sung Vu commanded decisively, using the previous methods for dealing with malevolent spirits to confront this entity. Recently, Uat Tri Sung Vu seemed to have been constantly dealing with these evil spirits and demons. But it also served as training for his troops. The tasks of leveling mountains, destroying temples, and suppressing various evil spirits not only tempered the soldiers' courage but also trained their formation coordination and their practice of following the commands of gongs and drums. Moreover, The losses were not significant. For the Imperial Guard, which had long neglected its military preparedness, this was, on the contrary, the most suitable battlefield. If they were to hastily engage an enemy in open field battles as they were, it was feared they would be routed in a single engagement, unable to recover. However, unlike the previous situations where everything went smoothly, today something unusual occurred. The demon-slaying arrows, crafted with secret techniques and coated with chicken blood, hit it but had no effect. What? Uat Tri Sung Vu was startled. The ineffectiveness of the demon-slaying arrows was secondary. More importantly, when the arrows struck the entity, they produced metallic clanging sounds. This thing was not an ethereal, indistinct illusion, but a clearly tangible entity. This is not a ghost. Uat Tri Sung Vu looked closely at the evil entity and discovered it had an incredibly tall and large physique. Draped in bearskin, with armor visible underneath, it held a shield in one hand and a long halberd in the other. On its head was a leather cap, and its face was covered by a four-eyed golden mask, looking very strange and powerful. Form ranks. Uat Tri Sung Vu immediately gave the order for the long-prepared soldiers to form up and advance. But as the creature approached, they realized they had underestimated its size from afar. It stood towering before the formation like a small mountain. The shield pressed forward like a collapsing mountain, instantly crushing more than 10 men in the front. The long halberd swung, immediately sweeping a large group of men to the ground. Many in the formation were new recruits. Seeing this, they were instantly scared out of their wits, too terrified to advance. The creature also knew how to seize opportunities. Finding the right moment, it turned and charged out from amidst the new recruits with its shield raised. If it escaped in such darkness, where would they find it again? Seeing the creature about to escape, Uat Tri Sung Vu immediately led his personal guards forward. But as soon as they engaged, Uat Tri Sung Vu felt his scalp tingle. This thing possessed immense strength. After just a few exchanges, Uat Tri Sung Vu felt he could barely lift his saber and was nearly struck down by its halberd. Such power momentarily reminded Uat Tri Sung Vu of a type of warrior recorded only in history books, those whose individual strength earned them eternal fame. Those who could single-handedly break enemy formations, taking the enemy general's head from amidst thousands upon thousands of soldiers. The so-called invincible against 10,000 men. Meanwhile, on a road not far away, Nguyen Ho witnessed this scene, breaking out in a cold sweat. His eyes filled with both excitement and fear. This time, Uat Tri Sung Vu is going to die. Nguyen Ho wished for the emperor to suffer a setback, to weaken the emperor's authority. But now, it seemed this setback was far too severe. If Uat Tri Sung Vu died, Nguyen Ho could imagine the immense shockwaves that would follow. He was excited because if the emperor's power weakened, he could gain greater power. Perhaps even regaining the authority of prime minister was not entirely impossible. His fear stemmed from this, if the upheaval was truly too great, causing the emperor's throne itself to become unstable. How could the situation possibly be stabilized? You have just finished listening to episode 1 of the audiobook, Demon Emperor, at Feel Good Cultivation audio channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest updates. Thank you so much.